The first warning was written in a military archive that no one outside the Iran High Command was ever meant to read. It was only one sentence, buried at the end of a classified report, beneath casualty numbers, trade projections, and diplomatic recommendations. If a human stops explaining themselves, end the conversation immediately. At the time, no one understood why that line mattered. Humans did not look dangerous. That was the problem. On Kestrel Station, humans were known mostly as maintenance workers, cargo handlers, dock clerks, pressure line inspectors, and the kind of small traders who sold replacement parts out of narrow shops with bad lighting. They were useful, polite, and easy to ignore. They filled out forms correctly. They paid late fees without argument. They apologized when larger species blocked their path in the corridors. To most of the galaxy, humanity was still young. Barely 2 centuries beyond its home system. No ancient empire. No holy war fleet. No 1,000-year blood feud carved into the stars. Just a scattered species with freighters, colony contracts, and an irritating habit of surviving routes that older civilizations considered inefficient. Jonas Hale was exactly the sort of human no one remembered. He ran a small repair counter on the lower commercial ring of Kestrel Station, wedged between a coolant shop and a food stall that smelled permanently of hot oil and sour spice. His sign was old. His tools were older. His hands had the rough, scarred look of someone who had spent most of his life fixing other people's emergencies before they became disasters. He was 46 by human count, with tired gray eyes, dark hair cut short, and a quiet face that gave away almost nothing. Every morning, he opened his shop before the station lights shifted from night cycle amber to working cycle white. Every evening, he closed it after the last freighter crew had come begging for a valve, a seal, a coupling, or a miracle. Jonas sold all 4, though he only charged for the first 3. Beside his register sat a chipped black mug with one faded word printed on it: home. No one asked what home meant. No one asked why Jonas turned the mug so the word faced him whenever he was thinking. No one asked why he always watched the corridor reflections in the glass behind his counter instead of looking directly at the people passing by. They should have. Jonas noticed things. He noticed which the RAN patrol officers walked the lower ring in pairs and which ones preferred to move alone. He noticed which docking inspectors changed their routes after private meetings with syndicate merchants. He noticed which human ships were delayed for random inspection, and which alien ships carrying heavier cargo were waved through without a scan. He noticed the station's oxygen vents had not been properly balanced in 6 months. He noticed the emergency bulkheads on Dock 12 would close 4 seconds too slowly if the power grid ever dipped below 70%. He noticed that the Therans had begun smiling more often when humans entered the room. That was new. The Therans controlled Kestrel Station's security contracts. Tall, armored, silver-skinned beings with black eyes and voices like metal dragged across stone, they had spent generations turning protection into ownership. They did not conquer stations. They simply made themselves necessary, then expensive, then impossible to remove. And on the lower ring, everyone knew the rule. You paid what the Therans asked. You thanked them for keeping order. You did not make trouble. Jonas Hale understood rules. He also understood something the Therans did not. Rules were only useful until someone started writing new ones. The Therans did not call it control. They called it stability. That was the word printed on every security contract, every docking agreement, every station-wide announcement that came from the upper administrative ring. Stability meant patrols in the corridors. Stability meant inspection checkpoints outside cargo bays. Stability meant armed the RAN officers standing near trade terminals with their hands resting comfortably beside shock batons no one had ever seen them use. They did not need to use them often. That was part of the design. Kestrel Station belonged, officially, to the Free Transit Authority. It was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where miners, merchants, settlers, fuel haulers, repair crews, and diplomats could meet without bringing their wars with them. But neutrality required security, and security required someone willing to enforce it. The Therans had volunteered 80 years ago. Then they had stayed. At first they guarded the docking arms. Then they managed the cargo scans. Then they handled dispute resolution. Then they took over route certifications, emergency response, customs enforcement, and finally the lower ring trade permits. No single change had looked dangerous by itself. That was how the Therans preferred it. A fee here. A delay there. A new regulation written in careful legal language. A mandatory inspection for safety. A temporary surcharge because of increased defensive readiness. By the time anyone understood what had happened, the Therans were not guests on Kestrel Station anymore. They were the door. And every trader had to pass through them. For most species, the arrangement was unpleasant but manageable. The Vey merchants paid double and added the cost to their cargo. The Eldarai miners gave gifts to patrol captains and called it tradition. The glass-bodied Senate avoided the lower ring entirely and hired Theron-approved brokers to speak for them. Humans did not have enough money for gifts, so they paid in other ways. Their ships were searched more often. Their cargo permits expired faster. Their docking claims were accidentally reassigned. Their repair orders were delayed until an alien vessel needed the same part, at which point the part somehow appeared. When humans complained, the Therans smiled. Not happily. Professionally. Your species is new to sector commerce, they would say. There are procedures you do not yet understand. The words were always polite. That made them worse. Jonas heard those words every week. He heard them from dock clerks who would not meet his eyes. From patrol officers who leaned too close across his counter. From station officials who spoke softly because they had learned long ago that cowardice sounded better when dressed as patience. He never argued. He fixed what arrived broken. He sold what people needed. He drank from his chipped black mug and watched the lower ring slowly adjust itself around the ran pressure. Humans began walking in smaller groups. Human captains stopped parking near the main docking spine. Human children were told not to stare at the ran armor. Then came Commander Vol Renick. He arrived 3 months before everything changed, transferred from a border enforcement fleet with a reputation for ending disputes quickly and leaving no written apologies behind. He was taller than most Therans, with polished silver plating along his neck and one artificial eye that glowed faintly blue whenever it focused on something. He liked order. He liked obedience more. Within 2 weeks, lower ring inspections doubled. Within a month, human ships were being charged risk compliance fees for routes they had flown safely for years. By the end of the second month, every human business owner on Kestrel Station understood the message. Leave quietly or learn your place. Jonas Hale did neither. He opened his shop every morning. He closed it every night. And in a locked drawer beneath his counter, beside spare fuses and old receipts, he kept a thin gray notebook filled with names, times, fees, and incidents. Not because he planned to use it. Not yet. But Jonas had learned a long time ago that when powerful people insisted nothing was happening, the first act of resistance was writing everything down. The incident happened during the morning rush, when the lower ring was crowded enough for embarrassment to become useful. Jonas had gone to the central trade terminal to confirm a shipment of pressure seals from the outer colonies. It was not a valuable shipment, not by station standards, but it mattered to the people who lived below Deck 5. The seals were for old air ducts, the kind station administration always promised to replace and never did. Jonas stood beneath the yellow terminal lights, scrolling through the manifest with one finger, his chipped black mug hooked by its handle around 2 fingers of his other hand. He had almost finished checking the delivery numbers when the crowd around him changed. Not moved. Changed. Conversation softened. A Vey merchant stopped mid-sentence. 2 cargo loaders stepped away from the terminal wall. A child with a food packet in his hand was pulled quickly behind his mother. Jonas did not turn immediately. He saw Commander Vol Renick first in the reflection of the terminal glass. The Theran commander walked toward him with 4 officers behind him, each one armored, polished, and positioned just far enough apart to turn a conversation into a threat. Renick's artificial eye glowed pale blue as it fixed on the manifest in Jonas's hand. Human Hale, Renick said. Jonas looked over his shoulder. Commander. His voice was level. Not warm. Not cold. Just present. Renick stopped close enough that Jonas had to tilt his head slightly to meet his eyes. The commander extended one silver-plated hand. Your manifest. Jonas held it for half a second longer than most beings would have dared. Then he handed it over. Renick glanced at the document, not reading it, only performing the shape of authority. Then he released it. The thin data sheets scattered across the floor. One slid beneath a fuel broker's boot. Another landed in a streak of spilled blue syrup from a breakfast cart. A third drifted against the toe of Renick's armored foot. The lower ring went silent. Jonas looked at the fallen papers. Then he crouched. Slowly, without hurry, he began gathering them. No one helped. That was the part he noticed. Not the laughter from one of Renick's officers. Not the way the commander's mouth curved slightly. Not even the boot that shifted just enough to pin one page in place. It was the silence around him. The careful, practiced silence of people who had learned to survive by becoming furniture. Renick spoke while Jonas was still on one knee. Your shipment has been placed under protective review. Jonas picked up the page stained with syrup. For what reason? Route instability. The route has been stable for 9 years. Human understanding of stability is incomplete. A few Therans laughed quietly. Jonas stood. His hands were dirty now. One corner of the manifest was torn. Renick leaned closer. There will also be an adjustment to your lower ring operating permit. Effective immediately. How much? 4 times your current rate. A murmur moved through the crowd, then died when Renix's eye shifted toward it. Jonas looked at the commander. Not up at him. At him. For the first time Renix's smile thinned. Most species looked away at that distance. Humans usually did too. But Jonas did not stare like a challenger. He looked like a man measuring a shelf before cutting wood. Calmly. Precisely. Then Jonas reached into his jacket, removed his payment card and placed it on the terminal. Renix processed the charge with visible satisfaction. Practical species, he said. Soft but practical. Jonas took back his card. He slid the damaged manifest under his arm. Around him, alien merchants pretended to become busy again. Jonas turned to leave. After 3 steps, Renix called after him. No complaint. Jonas stopped. For a moment, the station seemed to hold its breath. Then he looked back. His face had not changed. Put your name on it, Jonas said. Renix's artificial eye brightened. What? The review. The fee change. The delay. Jonas's voice stayed mild. Put your name on all of it. The crowd did not move. Renix smiled again, slower this time. With pleasure. Jonas nodded once. Good. That was all. He walked back toward the lower ring corridor, his damaged papers under one arm, his chipped black mug still steady in his hand. Behind him, the station slowly remembered how to breathe. No one understood what had happened. Not then. They thought Jonas Hale had accepted humiliation. They thought he had paid because he was afraid. They thought the word good meant surrender. It did not. It meant the waiting had a name now. Jonas did not speak about what happened at the trade terminal. That unsettled people more than anger would have. If he had shouted, the lower ring would have understood him. If he had thrown the damaged manifest back at Commander Renix's feet, someone might have called it courage. If he had gone to station administration and filed a formal complaint, everyone would have nodded sadly and waited for the complaint to disappear into the same quiet machinery that swallowed all human objections. But Jonas did none of those things. He returned to his repair counter, set his chipped black mug beside the register, wiped blue syrup from the corner of the manifest and opened the shop. By midday, 3 human captains had found reasons to come by. One needed a coolant clamp. One asked about pressure tubing. One pretended to compare filter prices for almost 15 minutes while watching Jonas's face. Finally, the youngest captain, Rhea Sol, lowered her voice. You all right? Jonas looked up from a cracked valve casing. Yes. That was ugly. Yes. You want us to do anything? Jonas tightened one screw, tested the valve, then set it aside. Not yet. Rhea stared at him for a moment. Then she nodded. Not happily. But she understood enough to be quiet. After they left, Jonas reached beneath the counter and unlocked the thin drawer where he kept the gray notebook. It was not impressive. No encryption. No hidden military code. No dramatic red warnings stamped across the cover. Just paper, because paper could not be erased by a station update and did not ask permission to exist. Jonas opened to the latest page and wrote carefully. Commander Vol Renix. Public terminal. Manifest seizure. False route review. 4 times permit increase. Witnesses present. Name confirmed. He paused. Then added one more line. Requested attribution. Accepted. He let the ink dry before closing the notebook. Across the corridor, in a room officially listed as a storage closet, Elian Park was doing the same thing in a very different way. Elian was 29, thin, tired, and permanently surrounded by wires. The station hired him as a low-grade systems assistant because he was human, cheap, and willing to crawl through maintenance spaces other species considered beneath them. The Therans called him useful. That was their second mistake. For 18 months, Elian had been building a private map of Kestrel Station's forgotten nervous system. Not the official grid. Not the polished version administrators showed visiting inspectors. The real one, the emergency relays behind old bulkheads, the manual overrides beneath docking arms, the ventilation loops that had been repaired too many times by too many species with too few parts. He knew which security cameras lagged by half a second. He knew which cargo doors could be frozen open with a maintenance signal. He knew which Theran patrol routes depended on lights that humans had quietly kept working for years. He had not built the map for revenge. At least, that was what he told himself. He built it because someone should know. Humans were like that on Kestrel Station. A medic named Sarah kept unofficial injury records after every Theran inspection. A schoolteacher named Malik kept updated evacuation lists for every human child on the lower ring. A retired pilot named June kept old jump coordinates that did not appear on modern route maps. None of them called it resistance. They called it being careful. That evening, Jonas closed his shop at the usual time. He turned off the front light, washed his mug, and stood for a while in the quiet. Then his comm blinked once. A message from Alien. I saw the terminal recording. Do we start? Jonas read it twice. Then he typed back. No. We continue. He placed the comm face down beside the gray notebook. Outside, Kestrel Station hummed around him. Lights glowing, vents breathing, doors opening and closing exactly as they had the day before. Everything looked normal. That was the point. Analyst Corvin Thale expected the human file to be boring. That was why he opened it last. His office sat on the upper diplomatic ring of Kestrel Station, far above the noise, heat, and sour metal smell of the lower decks. The walls were white. The desk was smooth black stone. The air was filtered so cleanly that Corvin sometimes forgot the station had 10,000 beings breathing beneath him. He worked for the Neutral Transit Bureau, which meant his job was to read patterns before they became disasters. Most patterns were simple. Trade pressure, border tension, security abuse, permit manipulation, small species being squeezed by larger ones. Nothing unusual. Nothing that could not be buried beneath 3 committees, 2 delayed hearings, and 1 carefully worded recommendation. The Thuran situation on Kestrel Station looked exactly like that. Annoying, yes. Dangerous, no. Corvin had already drafted the first sentence of his report. Human commercial complaints remain minor and unlikely to destabilize station operations. Then he paused. A small note in the file bothered him. Not the complaints themselves. Those were predictable. Humans had filed 26 objections in 11 months, all polite, all properly formatted, all ignored. What bothered him was what happened after each complaint failed. Nothing. No escalation. No public protest. No threats. No desperate appeal to allied powers. No emotional transmission to the Bureau. No attempt to embarrass the Therans through media channels. The humans simply stopped complaining. Corvin leaned back in his chair. In his experience, that was not normal. Young species complained constantly. Weak species begged. Proud species made noise even when noise accomplished nothing. Fearful species tried to gather sympathy before the blade fell. Humans had done none of that. They had gone quiet. Corvin opened the deeper cultural archive. The public summary of humanity was short and unimpressive. 2 centuries of interstellar movement. Scattered colonies. Growing trade presence. Limited military projection. No major imperial status. No formal claim to sector dominance. A small species. A practical species. A manageable species. Then Corvin accessed the restricted pre-expansion records. 30 minutes later, he had stopped taking notes. 2 hours later, his evening meal sat untouched beside his terminal. 4 hours later, he understood that the public summary was not wrong. It was simply useless. Human history was not a clean line of progress. It was a long record of disasters survived badly, repeatedly, stubbornly. They had fought each other before they had even understood their own planet. They had burned cities, crossed oceans in fragile vessels, frozen in wars, starved in sieges, rebuilt after plagues, argued beneath falling skies and somehow continued. Not gracefully. Not peacefully. But continuously. That was the part Corvin could not ignore. Most species broke after catastrophe. Humans adapted to it. They gave horror a name, taught it in schools, built monuments over it, then turned the memory into procedure. He read about wars where surrender would have been logical and found humans refusing logic. He read about cities destroyed and rebuilt in the same place. He read about ships lost, colonies failed, atmospheres poisoned, economies collapsed, and every time the same pattern emerged. Humans mourned. Humans blamed each other. Humans recorded everything. Then humans prepared for it to happen again. Corvin found an old military phrase repeated across several human eras. Never again. At first he thought it meant peace. Then he read further. It did not mean peace. It meant memory sharpened into a weapon. The next morning, Corvin requested an interview with an elderly human named Admiral Mara Quill, retired. She arrived wearing plain civilian clothes and carrying a small paper bag of fruit from the lower market. She smiled when she gave it to him. Corvin asked her what humans did when they were afraid. Mara thought about it for a long moment. Depends, she said. On what? Whether we have time. And if you do? Her smile faded slightly. Then we make lists. Corvin did not understand at first. Then he remembered Jonas Hale's complaints. 26 filed objections. No escalation. No noise. No visible anger. Just silence. Corvin returned to his office after the interview and deleted the first sentence of his report. He replaced it with something else. Human silence should not be assessed as compliance until further evidence is available. The broadcast came during the middle of the working cycle. That was deliberate. Commander Renik did not send it through private security channels. He did not send it to station administration first. He sent it across every open commercial frequency Kestrel station used: trade boards, docking terminals, cargo manifests, public corridor speakers, even the small emergency screens above the food stalls on the lower ring. He wanted everyone to hear it. Jonas Hale was replacing a cracked regulator when the first tone sounded. 3 sharp notes. Then Renik's voice filled the station. By authority of the RAN Security Command, the human medical transport Mercy Vale has been detained for inspection beyond Dock 12. Jonas's hand stopped moving. Across the corridor, a Vey merchant looked up from his counter. 2 cargo loaders froze beside a stack of sealed crates. Somewhere farther down the ring, a child began to cry before being hushed quickly by an adult. Renik continued. The vessel was found in violation of revised transit compliance standards. Its crew and passengers will remain aboard under the RAN custody until all human-operated trade routes in the Kestrel corridor accept security reassessment. A quiet sound moved through the lower ring. Not panic. Not yet. Something worse. Recognition. Everyone knew the Mercy Vale. It was not a warship. It was not even a cargo hauler. It was a narrow white medical transport that moved between mining colonies too poor to maintain full hospitals of their own. It carried surgeons, medicine, blood plasma, and children who needed treatment the outer settlements could not provide. Jonas stood very still. Renik's image appeared on the public screen outside the trade terminal. His silver face was calm, almost bored. No passenger will be harmed if human representatives cooperate. The RAN command expects formal route transfer discussions to begin within 6 hours. Until then, the vessel remains sealed. The broadcast ended. For several seconds no one spoke. Then the lower ring erupted into frightened whispers. How many aboard? Children. They sealed a medical ship? They can't do that. They already did. Jonas set the regulator down carefully. His comm blinked. One message from Elian Park. Dock 12 confirms. Mercy Vale locked. External clamps active. The RAN guards posted. Another message came from Sarah, the medic. 31 passengers. 12 children. 2 critical patients. Oxygen stable for now. Then Riasol. Tell me what to do. Jonas read each message once. Only once. He wiped his hands on a cloth, walked to the small sink behind his counter, and washed the grease from his fingers. He dried them slowly. He picked up his chipped black mug, looked at the faded word home and turned it toward him. Then he opened the drawer beneath the counter and took out the gray notebook. He did not add a new entry. He did not need to. The notebook had done its job. Across the corridor, people watched him without meaning to. They had seen the humiliation at the terminal. They had seen the extra fees, the inspections, the quiet swallowing of insult after insult. They had mistaken endurance for weakness. Jonas closed the notebook and slipped it inside his jacket. His comm blinked again. Elian, do we continue? Jonas looked toward the public screen where Renik's face had disappeared. For the first time all day his expression changed. Not much. Just enough that Riasol, watching from the entrance of his shop, took one step back. Jonas typed one sentence. No. We start. Then he sent it to every human contact on Kestrel Station. No speech followed. No declaration. No angry promise. Jonas only walked to the front of his shop, turned the sign from open to closed and picked up his mug. Ria stared at him. Jonas. He looked at her. All right, he said quietly. This time everyone who heard it understood. It was not acceptance. It was the sound of a door locking behind them. The first human ship left Kestrel Station 17 minutes after Jonas Hale sent the message. It was a small mining hauler named Red Finch, old enough that its engine signature coughed twice before settling into a steady burn. Its captain filed a routine departure notice citing scheduled hull inspection at external yard. The form was perfect. The timing was ordinary. No alarm triggered. 7 minutes later, a cargo shuttle undocked from Bay 3. Then a family transport from Bay 9. Then 2 maintenance pods from the lower service spine. Each vessel left for a different reason. Coolant issue. Contract delay. Medical transfer. Fuel imbalance. Crew rotation. Nothing dramatic. Nothing illegal. Nothing that would make the RAN officer look twice unless that officer already knew what to fear. None of them did. Commander Renik remained on the upper security deck, watching the locked medical ship Mercy Vale on his central display. He was waiting for human panic. He expected desperate calls, petitions, threats disguised as courage, maybe one foolish rescue attempt from a civilian freighter. He did not expect paperwork. Humans were very good at paperwork. By the end of the first hour, Every human child on the lower ring had been moved through maintenance corridors the Therans had never bothered to map properly. Malik, the schoolteacher, walked at the front with a calm smile and a soft voice, telling the youngest ones they were playing a quiet game. No one cried after that. Sarah, the medic, cleared her clinic in 11 minutes. She took trauma packs, blood stabilizers, portable oxygen, and 3 locked cases she had never listed on her official inventory. When a Theran patrol passed her in the corridor, she nodded politely and kept walking. Elian Park vanished into the station walls. That was not a metaphor. He opened a service hatch behind a dead vending machine on Deck 5, pulled himself into the narrow maintenance crawlspace, and began moving through the real Kestrel station, the one made of old relays, forgotten wiring, pressure valves, patched conduit, and human fingerprints. From there he started sending commands. Small ones. Harmless ones. A security camera looped 3 seconds of empty corridor. A cargo door delayed its lock confirmation. A docking sensor reported routine thermal noise. A Theran patrol lift stopped at the wrong floor, apologized in a pleasant automated voice, and took them 7 levels above where they wanted to be. No damage. No attack. Just friction. Human friction. Jonas moved last. He walked the lower ring one time, slowly, carrying his chipped black mug in one hand and the gray notebook inside his jacket. He stopped at the coolant shop, the food stall, the pressure seal vendor, the schoolroom, the clinic, and the old observation window where human workers sometimes stood during breaks to look at the stars. Everywhere he stopped, someone was already gone. Or leaving. No one said goodbye. Goodbyes were for people who did not expect to return. At Dock 8, Rhea Sol waited beside her freighter with engines warm and lights dimmed. That everyone? She asked. Jonas checked his comm. One by one the confirmations appeared. Children clear. Clinic clear. Lower ring humans clear. Outer dock crews clear. Elian in position. Jonas looked toward Dock 12, where the Mercy Veil remained sealed under the RAN clamps. Not everyone, he said. Rhea's jaw tightened. Jonas stepped aboard her ship. Behind them the docking bridge withdrew. The freighter lifted cleanly from Kestrel Station and joined the silent line of human vessels slipping into the dark. No alarms sounded. No weapons fired. No one shouted. By morning cycle, station administration noticed the absence. By midday they noticed the consequences. The lower ring oxygen balance slipped by 12%. 3 cargo elevators froze between decks. Docking Bay 6 refused to open for a Theran supply ship because of a maintenance authorization error no one could explain. The food processors on Deck 4 began printing emergency ration paste in sealed blocks labeled Human Child Safe, Priority Mode. Commander Renick demanded answers. The station gave him error codes. For the first time since arriving on Kestrel Station, Vol Renick looked at a silent corridor and wondered whether silence could be a weapon. It could. It already was. Commander Vol Renick had not slept. Therans did not require as much rest as humans, but they did require control. By the 2nd hour of the morning cycle, control had become difficult to locate. Kestrel Station was not failing. That would have been easier. Failure had shape. Failure had source points, causes, repair paths. A broken valve could be replaced. A damaged relay could be bypassed. A sabotaged grid could be secured. But this was not failure. This was absence. Systems still worked but badly. Doors opened but not for the right people. Cargo records existed, but half of them referenced human maintenance tags no Theran officer understood. Emergency alerts kept downgrading themselves into routine notices. Docking arms requested confirmations from workers who were no longer on the station. Everywhere Renick looked, the humans had left behind small dependencies disguised as kindness. A pressure correction here. A manual override there. A safety patch written by someone named Elian Park and never formally submitted because no one had asked why Deck 5 had stopped losing air every 3rd night. Renick hated it. Not because it was clever. Because it was embarrassing. Find Hale, he ordered. His officers searched the station, then the docking logs, then external traffic records. Jonas Hale was gone. So were the others. Every human-owned vessel had departed through legal channels, each notice properly filed, each signature valid, each route explanation boring enough to be invisible. Renick stood before the main security display, silver hands clasped behind his back, while the sealed medical transport Mercy Veil floated beyond Dock 12 under armed guard. That, at least, remained under his control. Then the proximity alarm sounded. One ship dropped out of transit at the edge of station space. Small vessel. Human freighter. No escort. No visible weapons charge. No military registration. Its name appeared on the screen after a moment. Bright Sparrow. Renick stared at it. Open channel, he said. The connection formed almost instantly. Jonas Hale appeared on the command display. He sat in the pilot's chair of a civilian freighter, wearing the same plain work jacket he had worn behind his repair counter. His hair was slightly disordered. His face was calm. On the console beside him sat the chipped black mug with the faded word home turned toward the camera. Renick felt something cold move through his chest. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition. Hale, he said. Commander Renick. You fled the station. I left legally. You removed essential personnel. I am not responsible for your staffing choices. One of Renick's officers shifted behind him. Renick's artificial eye brightened. You return alone? Jonas looked down briefly as if checking a gauge. Then back at him. I came first. Renick's mouth curved. There it was. Human foolishness finally. Some emotional rescue gesture. Some desperate civilian bravery wrapped in calm words. You are one small freighter, Renick said. You have no weapons capable of breaching the RAN security shields. No military flag. No authority here. Jonas nodded once. All true. Then explain why I should not destroy your vessel and end this irritation. Jonas picked up his mug, took a slow drink and set it down carefully. Because there are 12 children aboard the Mercy Vale, he said. And because I am asking politely. The command deck went silent. Renick stepped closer to the display. You believe politeness protects you? No. Then what does? Jonas's face did not change. Preparation. For 3 seconds no one spoke. Then Renick laughed. It was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was controlled, amused, almost disappointed. You humans, he said softly. You endure a few fees, lose a few permits, suffer one detained ship, and suddenly you think patience is power. Jonas glanced at something off-screen. Commander, before you give the order, I recommend you take 10 seconds. Renick smiled. For what? To notice what has already happened. Renick turned his head slightly toward his weapons officer. Target the freighter. The officer touched the console. Nothing happened. He touched it again. His expression changed. Renick's smile disappeared. On the screen, Jonas Hale sat quietly with both hands wrapped around his chipped black mug. The 10 seconds had begun. The weapons console did not reject the command. That was what made the silence worse. A rejected command would have meant error. A locked command would have meant intrusion. A dead console would have meant sabotage. But the targeting system accepted the order, processed it, and then displayed a single line in calm white text. Authorization required. Station civilian safety override. Renick stared at it. Bypass. The weapons officer moved quickly, silver fingers flashing across the panel. A second line appeared. Bypass request submitted to Registered Maintenance Authority. Who is the registered authority? Renick demanded. The officer swallowed. Alien Park. Renick turned slowly. The human. No one answered. They did not need to. Across Kestrel Station, lights shifted from working cycle white to emergency blue. Not all at once. That would have looked like panic. One corridor at a time. One docking arm at a time. One security checkpoint after another, each system accepting commands through back doors that had not existed in any official map until a tired human systems assistant had made them necessary. Inside the maintenance spine behind Deck 5, Alien Park lay on his stomach in a narrow crawl space, one hand holding a cable in place, the other tapping commands into a cracked portable terminal balanced against his wrist. He was sweating. His left shoulder had gone numb 10 minutes ago. He did not care. On his screen, the RAN security architecture unfolded like a machine he had been repairing for years because in a way he had. Every forgotten relay. Every emergency circuit. Every lazy patch the RAN inspectors had signed off without reading. Every human correction made quietly so the station would not kill people. He did not own the system. But the system remembered who had kept it alive. Elian opened a channel. Jonas, he said, voice thin with static. They're trying to bypass. On the Bright Sparrow, Jonas did not look away from Renick's face on the screen. Let them. Elian smiled once. Then he released the second layer. The Varan guard ships around Dock 12 lost formation in the same instant. Their engines did not shut down. Their shields did not collapse. Nothing exploded. Their navigation systems simply disagreed about where Kestrel Station was. One ship corrected upward by 14 meters. Another drifted backward. A third rotated 6 degrees and locked itself into collision prevention hold. The armed formation around the medical transport opened like a fist losing strength. Renick's command deck erupted. Navigation fault. Dock 12 perimeter unstable. External clamps still active. Security grid not responding. Renick slammed one hand onto the console. Cut station access. Isolate our systems. We can't, an officer said. The isolation protocol is routing through lower ring maintenance. Renick's artificial eye burned bright blue. Then retake lower ring maintenance. The officer looked at another screen. His voice became quieter. We cannot locate lower ring maintenance. Renick understood then. Not fully. Enough. On the display, Jonas Hale set down his mug. Release the Mercy Veil. Renick leaned toward the screen. You have infected my systems. No, Jonas said. We maintain them. The words landed harder than a threat. Before Renick could answer, a new proximity alarm screamed through the command deck. 1 ship became 4. 4 became 9. 9 became 16. They did not arrive from open transit lanes. They emerged from dead sensor pockets, old cargo shadows, and abandoned approach vectors that station records claimed had been unusable for 20 years. Human vessels. Not all warships. That made it worse. There were freighters with reinforced hulls. Medical escorts. Mining tugs with industrial grapples. 2 sleek military cutters without markings. A colony defense carrier running silent until the last possible second. Every one of them positioned with ugly, practical precision. No ceremony. No formation lights. No heroic broadcast. Just presence. Then a woman appeared on Renick's screen. She was older, dark-skinned, with close-cropped gray hair and the stillness of someone who had commanded too many emergencies to be impressed by another one. Commander Renick, she said. This is Captain Mara Quill, Civilian Recovery Authority attached to Human Corridor Protection. You are holding a medical vessel containing non-combatants and children. You have 3 minutes to release external clamps and withdraw armed personnel from Dock 12. Renick's jaw tightened. You are threatening the RAN Security Command. No, Mara said. I am describing the least damaging option remaining to you. No one on the human side raised their voice. That was what Renick would remember later. Not the ships. Not the system failures. The tone. Mara continued. If any passenger aboard the Mercy Veil is injured from this moment forward, your command deck will lose pressure control. If any the RAN vessel targets a human ship, your engines will enter safety lock. If you attempt to move the medical transport, every docking claim your office has filed in the last 6 months will be transmitted to the Free Transit Authority with supporting evidence. Jonas opened his jacket and removed the gray notebook. He held it up just long enough for Renick to see it. Names, Jonas said. Dates. Signatures. Renick looked at the notebook. Then at the weapons console still asking permission from a human maintenance worker. Then at the 16 ships holding his station without firing a shot. He had expected rage. He had prepared for desperation. He had not prepared for accounting. The 3 minutes passed slowly. At 2 minutes and 41 seconds, Renick gave the order. Release the transport. The external clamps opened. The RAN guards withdrew from Dock 12. The Mercy Veil's medical beacon came alive, weak but steady. On board, 12 children began crying when the lights turned green. Sarah's voice came over the human channel from a rescue shuttle. Boarding now. Patients alive. Children scared. No casualties. Jonas closed his eyes for half a second. Only half. Then he opened them. Captain Mara Quill nodded once. Recovery confirmed. The human ships did not cheer. They moved. 2 escorts took position beside the Mercy Veil. The medical transport detached from Kestrel Station and slid toward open space. The freighters shifted to cover its path. The military cutters stayed pointed at nothing and everything. Alien withdrew the first layer of control. Doors began working again. Then elevators. Then cargo records. But the weapons console remained locked until the Mercy Veil crossed the safe transit boundary. Only then did the final message disappear. On Renick's screen, Jonas Hale picked up his chipped black mug. Commander, he said quietly. Renick said nothing. Jonas looked at him with the same calm expression he had worn at the trade terminal. Next time, Jonas said, read the names before you sign. Then the channel closed. For a long time, Vol Renick stood in the emergency blue light of his own command deck and listened to his officers breathe. Kestrel Station was still intact. His ships were still alive. His command still existed. And somehow that felt less like mercy than a warning. The official RAN report called the Kestrel incident a temporary operational disruption. No one who had been there believed that. Commander Vol Renick was removed from station authority within 48 hours. The announcement said he had been transferred for strategic reassessment. In the RAN language, that meant failure without public admission. He did not protest. That frightened his superiors more than a protest would have. 3 days after the Mercy Veil left Kestrel Station, Analyst Corvin Thale was summoned to a private meeting on the upper diplomatic ring. The room had no windows, no flags, and no recording devices except the one Corvin brought himself. Across from him sat High Commander Savax, a Varan old enough to remember when their species had still won wars with soldiers instead of contracts. His silver plating was dull with age, but his eyes were sharp. He placed a copy of Corvin's human assessment on the table. "You wrote this before the incident?" "Yes," Corvin said. "You believed humans were becoming dangerous?" Corvin chose his words carefully. "No. I believe they already were. The incident only made it visible." Savax was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question no the RAN officer wanted written down. "How did one repairman take control of my station?" Corvin shook his head. "He did not take control of it. That is the part your command structure must understand." Savax's eyes narrowed. Corvin opened his file and turned the screen toward him. Humans had been holding parts of Kestrel together for years. Not officially. Not with permission. They saw problems and fixed them. They saw abuses and recorded them. They saw routes, gaps, habits, dependencies. Your officers saw servants. The humans saw systems. Savax read quietly. Corvin continued. When Commander Renick humiliated Jonas Hale, Hale did not react because the cost was not yet worth the response. When fees increased, humans endured it. When cargo was delayed, they documented it. When inspections became harassment, they adapted. And when the medical ship was taken? Savax asked. That gave them a reason. The room felt colder after that. Savax looked toward the sealed door. They planned all of it in advance. No, Corvin said. That is worse. They prepared without knowing exactly what they were preparing for. For the first time, the High Commander looked unsettled. Corvin let that sit. Then he said the sentence he had rewritten 17 times before the meeting. Most species become dangerous when they are cornered. Humans become dangerous when they are given time. Savax looked back at the report. There were pages of evidence. Jonas Hale's notebook, Alien Park Station map, Sarah's injury records, Malik's evacuation lists, Mara Quill's recovery order, and every legal document Renick had signed without reading carefully. Finally, Savax asked, how should the RAN command proceed? Honestly, Corvin said. Pay what you owe. Return what was taken. Stop mistaking politeness for submission. And never put human children behind a locked door again. Savax did not answer. He did not need to. 3 weeks later, Jonas Hale reopened his repair counter on the lower commercial ring. The permit fee had returned to its original amount. The false route review had vanished. Dock 12 had new medical protections written into station law. The RAN patrols still walked the corridors, but they no longer smiled when humans entered the room. Jonas said nothing about it. He unlocked his shop before morning cycle, turned on the old sign, and placed his chipped black mug beside the register with the faded word home facing him. Alien Park came by at noon to buy a fuse he did not need. Sarah stopped in for pressure tape. Rhea Soul leaned in through the doorway and asked if the coffee was fresh. Life resumed. That was what unsettled the station most. The humans did not celebrate. They did not boast. They did not demand statues, apologies, or songs. They simply went back to work. But everyone on Kestrel Station understood the work differently now. When Jonas looked up from a broken valve, people remembered the weapons console asking for human permission. When Elian opened a service panel, the RAN officers found reasons to walk another corridor. When a human child laughed near Dock 12, every guard on duty stood a little straighter. And in a classified archive far above the lower ring, Corvin Thale added one final line to his assessment. Do not fear humans because they are violent. Many species are violent. Fear them because they can endure insult, record injustice, repair your world around you, and wait calmly until you give them a reason. He saved the report. Then he added the warning that would outlive everyone involved. If a human goes quiet, do not ask what they are thinking. Ask what they have already done.